Okay, yes, hello again. This is now tarot lesson number 88, and I have a couple of simple things to say. I'd like to begin. This is the paperback version of the Tarot Reader Volume 1, and it's got illustrations in it, so like that. So the other one, the tarot book here, there's a paperback as well from Amazon, doesn't have any illustrations, it's all text, but I added some pictures of cards in this particular one. So it's available on Amazon print on demand. If you go to amazon.com or whatever your country is and type in John Ballantrae and the Tarot Reader, you'll find it. There's a Kindle as well. So that's my promotion. So today, I'd like to begin with a quote from Albert Einstein, who said, "The most important thing in life is the mysterious." And I mentioned this in the last video because I had been watching a video of two mathematicians talking about AI, artificial intelligence, and is it dangerous and what can it do and what can it not do. And the Russian mathematician began by talking about Einstein, and he mentioned this, and I want to come back to that in the second part, where we look at the mysterious. The second thing is, I'll put a link in the description down below for the video if you want to watch it, but the mathematician said, Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is always limited, and the mathematician talked about how if he's working in mathematics, it's not a question of more data, and then suddenly make a discovery, because knowledge is limited. But as Einstein said, whereas imagination embraces the entire world, giving birth to evolution. So you have imagination. Are you using it? Are you taking it seriously? Are you making use of it? Or are you rejecting it or thinking it's not that important? Because Einstein, who knew a thing or two, probably, he says imagination is the most important because it gives rise, it embraces the whole world. And I think is the point, that with the tarot, you're not just studying cards, you're bringing in art and music and literature and poetry and life lessons and interesting bits and pieces and your observations and your imagination, how you put things together. And it's all valid because imagination embraces the whole world, not just everybody, all the people, but you and all your thoughts and all your thinking. So, I can't remember what. Okay, so imagination. So I mentioned this quote in the last video, and later that same day, I was thinking about imagination, and I thought imagination is probably the magician. Somehow, they're connected, and if you think about it, I lost my piece of paper. Imagination's got M-A-G in it, and magician's got M-A-G. So we've got the idea of image and pictures and imagination and magician. So, can't remember. Okay, so some months ago, maybe 8 months ago, Talis left a comment about the fact that in the magician card, you've got the symbol for infinity above the head, and also in the strength card, you've got infinity above the head. And I said at the time, that's the kind of thing you think about. So some months later, we've been all over the place, back and forth. And then after mentioning that quote about imagination, it struck me, it's the whole world, it's infinity. So the magician is about imagination, I think, and we've got the sign of infinity above his head. So with the magician card, you're dealing with imagination. So if a card comes up in a reading, what can the person imagine? or they may be thinking about ideas that are maybe a bit outrageous or that seem impossible. But with the magician upright, they're not impossible. Maybe with the magician upside down, then you're out of your depth, maybe, is the kind of thing you would talk about with the questioner. Whereas if the magician is upright, then there is no limit, or the sky's the limit, because imagination embraces the whole world. And maybe you could give an example if the magician card comes up and you're talking to the questioner. You, the reader, have got the idea of imagination in mind, and you talk about imagination and how it might apply to the question or to the questioner and to their ideas and to the things that they think are possible. So we've got the magician with the sign of infinity representing imagination, for instance. And we've also got imagination in the strength card. So I might get stuck here. I don't know quite what to say about this, but with the strength card as well, you, the reader, ought to be or could usefully talk about imagination with the questioner. Because if you look at the card, we've got a woman closing a lion's mouth. Normally, if you see a lion, you don't go up to it and close its mouth. You step away because it's dangerous. So what we've got going on here is something different. So the lion can represent Leo, right? The king of the beasts, or the king. And so we've got a woman imagining what's possible and controlling ego in other people, or controlling ego in their own self. I had written down a few things about this, and I can't quite. If you'd been in my head an hour ago, I had all these thoughts and all this paragraphs of stuff, and now I'm trying to remember it, and I can't remember it. So I think I'm going to get stuck, and maybe we'll come back to this later. But it's something for you to consider. If the strength card, what the strength card and the magician, what do they have in common? They've got the idea of imagination. So maybe with both of them, you get the questioner to pay attention to and take seriously, pay attention to the ideas that they've got, or maybe the plans they had that they rejected, because there can have been great value in what they thought or what they imagined, even though it seemed maybe impossible. And when it comes to impossible, no, it's the wrong page. Sorry, wrong page. Here we are. Okay, so the Russian mathematician said, discovery is always felt as a leap, imagining something impossible. So, for instance, this has to do with artificial intelligence. And so, but when it comes to mathematical discovery, you don't just keep adding more facts and more information. You take a leap to something impossible. So it's the square root of negative numbers. Somebody imagine, let's say there is such a thing. You can have an answer to the square root of a negative number. What might it be? And when the Russian said, discovery is always felt as a leap, the fool. So when the fool comes up, if you're willing to make a leap and try something or imagine something that seems impossible, it'll work. With the fool upside down, maybe we're saying that what you're imagining is not going to work. It doesn't mean don't do it, but just don't expect that it's going to work the first time you try it. And maybe that's what we do with the fool reversed. It's not so much don't do it, but don't expect that everything is going to work out correctly the first time you try it. Because with the fool card, and maybe it's a card of discovery, and in your notes you write down the fool and you write down discovery, and think about what discovery is and how you discover anything. It can be chance, You opened a door and there was something right in front of you that you'd never noticed before. So a discovery may be something like that, but it also may be something you've been leading up to, but you didn't know you were leading up to it. So pay attention to what you notice. So this idea of discovery being a leap, and the idea that imagining that something isn't impossible. And this is the difference between artificial intelligence and human intelligence. Artificial intelligence, as I understand it from the video, is based on what has already been discovered or what has already been done and putting it together. Whereas discovery is more imagining that what is impossible could actually work. And people can do that. You and I can do that. That's why we can look at cards and make sense of them. There's a Four of Swords, which means something. And make sense of them and relate them to a question to give an answer. And we can do it, but somehow a computer can't, or an algorithm can't, not the same way that we can. So the first one had to do with the mysterious. And I want to talk about one and nothing, 1 and 0. I can't find my piece of paper. Oh, it was mysterious. Sorry, I'm rambling here. The most important thing in life is the mysterious. So, I can't find my pen. I was going to write, but anyway. So, I'm thinking of 1 and 2, the number 1 and the number 2, because 1. I had a pen, I can't find it. Okay, so 1 is unity. The number 1 is unity. And it's complete and it's whole. And if you look at the etymology of the word holy, H-O-L-Y, it comes from a root that means whole, W-H-O-L-E. So something that's holy is special because it's complete. And because it's complete and whole, it contains everything. So if you're the number 1, or imagine the number 1 of the idea of unity, how do you get from unity to something else? Because you can't have 1 and 1 is 2, where you've got 1 is unity, and where does the second one come from? Because everything, if unity is unity, then it contains everything. There can't be anything outside it. So if you say, well, there's another 1, it can't be, because the other 1 must exist within the wholeness of the number 1. So how do you get from 1 to 2? And you can't have something outside of 1, because 1 is perfect harmony. So how you get to 2 is by reflecting 1. So we've got everything, and then we've got the reflection of everything. But it's a reflection. It's no longer the original. It's a reflection. But we look at the reflection, and because it's reflecting everything, we think it is the original. We think it's everything, but it's not. So, I think I'd like to come back to this later, but maybe in the light of comments that you might make. But so we've got 1 is unity and complete perfection, and 2 is the reflection. But the reflection isn't the original, but it looks like the original. And it's a bit like we live in the reflection. So when we have a problem, it looks like a real problem. But when you've got a problem, ask yourself or remind yourself, this is a reflection, because wholeness is complete and perfectly unified and perfectly harmonious. So there can't be anything wrong within it, because it's heaven. And I'm reminded of Alexander Waugh talking about how in his TV show on the piano a love affair. He talks about how when you're reading the music, singing the words, and playing the piano, it's like he said it's like nirvana. It's like heaven, nirvana, where nothing exists, but everything is in perfect working order. And that's a bit like the number one. Everything works, and there is no disharmony in it, and there aren't things going wrong, and things can't go wrong because it's whole and complete and harmonious. So when something in your life goes wrong, you're dealing with the reflection, an incorrect or wonky reflection. So when something is going wrong, whatever it happens to be, look and imagine or remind yourself, what is the original situation that I'm seeing incorrectly reflected? And if you go to the original and focus there, it will then be reflected in your life, and your problem will be solved, because you'll be reflecting harmony rather than reflecting your own distorted view of life. And this can be how the law of attraction works, because the law of attraction talks about, and various other people talk about, if you want something, what you do is you imagine you've already got it, and then it appears. And so what's going on is, you imagine you've got it, it already exists in the whole. It already exists in heaven or in perfection. And that's why it can happen in life, in the reflection, because it already exists there. And this is all sorts of New Age philosophies talk about how to make things manifest. And you imagine it's already done, and eventually it happens. It's the idea that everything exists within the whole anyway already. And what we need to do is focus on it, on already existing perfection, and it will then be reflected in the mirror of life. And this sort of ties in with the idea of Maya and illusion in Buddhism. I think it's Buddhism, where life is an illusion. And it's because life is whole and complete, and we're dealing with the reflected image of it and the reflection. At least that's what I think at the moment. I don't know what you'll think of that. There's more, and maybe we'll get to more later, or if you have things you want to talk about or things you'd like to observe or say. So that's it for the moment. Hope you enjoyed that, and I'll talk to you in a few days. Okay? Bye-bye.